Mandela reflected. A mirror? Deb asked doubtfully. They both stood before the cold concrete wall in Lisa's unfinished basement of her parents' house. Both old enough to be independent young women living far from their childhood homes and mature enough to know when to set slumber party superstitions aside, but too stubborn to ignore where their guts were screaming loud and clear above the collective shouts of their intellects. What better way to put all this to rest? Lisa said, standing profile with the mirror, but noticeably antsy enough to avoid her own eyes in the glass. Why, because of mirror, mirror? Deb proposed rhetorically. Of course she already knew what the next words would be out of her 23-year-old friend's mouth. Since both first hearing about the Mandela effect a few years before, mirror mirror had become a code word traded ad infinitum between them to signify when they were both questioning reality, whether that be something they heard on the news or something blatantly standing in front of their eyes. Deb was the more skeptical of the two of them, as she didn't share as many personal connections with these so-called slips in reality, where small changes like the line in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, mirror, mirror on the wall, changed to magic mirror on the wall. And it wasn't just that the line had been changed in the digitally remastered version. As Deb and Lisa had both been quick to pop in their old VHS tapes, there in Lisa's basement, to see that the line had even changed in their childhood copies. Deb didn't have much stake in this effect, or in many of the effects, in fact, as she didn't have much memory either way. But this marked a significant turning point in Lisa's life where everything she had taken for granted with regard to her physical world was up for question. Deb had to admit that there was something to this phenomena, which she could not rightly put a finger on, mostly because of how dramatically these variations affected her loved ones around her. Lisa was visibly shaken by this apparent lapse in her memory, and as her best friend, Deb couldn't help but empathize with her distress and excitement to explore the truth. This mirror has always been here, even back when we were 9, sitting there in our beanbags, recording everything that ever happened down here, Lisa explained, prompting Deb to step up to the mirror, but her friend remained where she was, absently twisting the rings on her finger. The only thing I hadn't thought to do was record the mirror. That's how we prove once and for all this is happening. How's a mirror going to prove anything? Deb pressed her friend. You're scrying again, Lise? Her friend nodded her head until her fringe of black hair veiled her face, once again hiding her eyes. I am, Deb, but I've never had results like this before. We promised not to mess with that stuff anymore, not since the planchette snapped when we were playing with your Ouija board, Deb said. She hadn't expected her gaze to drift to the stack of board games in the corner, where the Ouija board box was indeed sitting soiled and crumpled at the bottom of the pillar. I know, Deb, I know what the Bible has to say about all this, Lisa said with a dismissive hand. But sometimes I think we have to use the devil's tools against him. How so? Remember when I told you that I think God is the one creating these Mandela effects to show us this world is fraudulent, so we finally wake up? Deb nodded agreeably. And I think you'd err on the side of caution and put all your chips on the table too. God's trying to show us how evil this world is, and he's showing us, through the mirror mirror effect, where all this is stemming from. He wants us to use the mirrors to find validation for what's happening to our world, to our psyches, and regain our lost memories. By gazing into a mirror, Deb asked. It's not just scrying anymore. I don't know if it ever was, Lisa said. God is showing us that it's the mirrors that are causing these parallel realities. They aren't natural, and they're what the devil uses to monitor us, I'm convinced. It hung there, on the wall, recording us in the TV as we watched Snow White, who knows how many times. The glass swallowed up those memories, and countless others. Each time we step in front of a mirror, we're reflecting a new world, creating a whole other universe where slightly different characteristics start to stand out, or not. It captures our soul, a copy of us in our realm. And God is starting to collapse these multiverses in the mirror realms so that we'll start to wake up to what's happening. Our original world is in there somewhere. I've seen it myself. If only I thought to record it. What do you mean you saw it? I entered it. I stood here staring into the glass for long enough until I entered the scene. Maybe when I was 8, and I was watching Snow White. It was right at the moment when Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, Who's the Fairest of Them All came on. I proved it. I think we can do it again, though. I can't tell you how many times I tried to re-enter the scene, but I think I had beginner's luck. That's why you need to practice it next. Lisa cut off from her narrative to retrieve her parents' old VHS camcorder from the crawlspace underneath the stairs, complete with a tripod and a fuzzy microphone. I think everything will play out in the mirror while you're in front of it. That's how I saw it anyway. And I'll record what you see. Finally, we'll have proof of the Mandela effect. I don't have any Mandela effects from my past, Deb argued, unconsciously gravitating back toward the stairs and away from the camcorder's intrusive glass eye. Remember when you read the Bible to me when we were kids, on our sleepovers, to test if I could stay awake? Lisa pressed her friend. We did it right here, in front of the TV, in direct eyesight of the mirror. It was you who was reading the pages, so only you can do this, I believe. Oh, Isaiah 11:6, is that what you're talking about? Deb asked, with a new light in her eye. She could see where this was going now. Yes, the lion will lay down with the lamb, Lisa shouted excitedly. Don't lie to me because we both know you have your own Mandela effect. We both know it used to be lion and not wolf. I certainly remember lion, Deb replied distantly, and this was true. She had almost forgotten about this little lapse in her memory, perhaps as a defense mechanism to ward off the utter sinking feeling it seemed to incite in her, which seemed to be elicited in most people who were challenged with their own personal Mandela effect. Will you do it, Deb? If I'm right and we can get visible proof, I think we'll snatch that true reality, the one we've known, back out of the mirrorverse and make it ours again. I have a Bible right here. Lisa brandished the tome at her, sporting a somewhat mischievous grin. Once you're back in this world, we'll both find the passage in the Bible together and confirm my hypothesis. Then we'll tell the world, as many people as we can. We'll canvass the streets and make this world right again. I know you've always thought God gave you a calling to make this world better. What if this is what we're meant to do? Deb glanced doubtfully into the mirror, and her friend took that as her consent to continue. She slid a chair close to the wall, parked Deb in front of the mirror, and switched on the camera. What am I supposed to do? Just stare into it? Deb asked over her shoulder. But Lisa was already booking for the stairs and was pounding up to the first floor. She made sure to kill the lights, but it was the middle of the day and some ambient sunshine still created a dull screen for her to look through. She simply sat there and watched her black silhouette in the glass, letting her mind wander toward dinner, her cell phone, the last fight she had with her mother, and, unfortunately, the Ouija board in the corner. She prayed to God, begging his forgiveness for practicing scrying, and watched as the colors began to swirl in the glass. She thought this would snap her out of her trance, but it seemed to sink her deeper into the murky, sludgy thoughts that seemed to accumulate in her head like molasses. She thought her silhouette even looked younger, but still her, and she quickly became that person, switching over to that little girl in the glass and turning away from the mirror, which was now like a window into Deb's former world, where the red eye of the camera could still be seen blinking in the shadows. Deb turned her head and could see the basement as it once was, complete with beanbags, Coke cans, and snacks scattered across the multicolored carpet, marked with cartoonish roads to drive their toy cars. There was the Bible, open and bright in the cast of the naked bulb in the ceiling. And a much younger Lisa snoozed on her futon mattress on the floor, twisted up in her blankets. Deb could remember her mission, something vague, like an impression from a dream, and she knew what verse to turn to next. She went to Isaiah 11:6 and read the line aloud. The lion shall lie down with the lamb, her voice sweet and childlike, untouched by cigarette smoke, coffee, or years of bad karaoke nights. She continued to read and didn't stop until she heard something stir in the corner, like a mouse scratching around in one of the board game boxes. She stared at the Ouija board box, now on the top of the stack, and began to hyperventilate when she saw that the top of the box was missing. It wasn't even on the concrete floor next to the stack, which she would have expected if it had accidentally fallen off. Deb continued to read, but the moment she took her eyes off the box, something stirred again, and she looked up to see the planchette standing upright so that it was just peeking over the lip of the box, like a glass eye or monocle. She sensed that it was a hateful eye, glaring at her now, and she screamed, begging and shaking Lisa to wake up, but she never moved. Nothing else made a noise, but after searching the corner again, she saw that the planchette was missing, just like the lid, and something drew her eyes to the mirror. Her face she saw in the glass caused her to bolt to her feet and sprint up the stairs. What she saw was Lisa's face, or what looked like her as an older woman, and her eyes were missing. The sockets leaked blood and her mouth moved soundlessly. The head fell away as if chopped off its shoulders, revealing a dark room where a camera recorded silently from behind an empty chair. Of course, the pre-teen Deb didn't see any of this, as she was already sprinting down the street outside in her mirror world, hoping that her home existed somewhere in that parallel realm. and that her parents would be there to comfort her. At least she had the Bible as it once was. She could be certain that she had the protection of God, even as she began to forget that she was actually 23 years old somewhere, in another world, and that she had once been a girl on a mission. Unseen by anyone, the stack of board games inside the mirror collapsed without a noise, revealing a lone box at the bottom. The lid popped off into the air and did not reappear. Something hunched and crawling, dark as pitch, approached the camera and knocked it to the floor. It dragged it backwards, scratching the hard plastic against the floor, a wispy head and shoulders retracting and disappearing back into the box, taking the camera, tripod, and microphone with it. The image faded from the mirror for good, and the brightly lit basement scene froze as it was, so that even the little girl's chest did not rise and fall and the bulb did not flicker in its socket. Nothing ever moved again, not even the box in the corner and its milky, staring eye.